Alright guys, Skrapz here again today, going to be reviewing the Black Ops 4 season, talking about my top 10 players for the entirety of the season, plenty of honourable mentions here as well, courtesy to all of the scoreboards and the player cards I guess I should say, from this video goes to VLionMan on Twitter. I'll leave his links down below. Really awesome stuff. I believe he's even been having talks with Activision when he was out at Champs, talking about whether we can make these cards into an actual tradable commodity in future CDL seasons. Would be very cool. Firstly, these are not my top 10. These are just, you know, to wet your whistle a little bit. Top 10 rated cards from the CWL finals in Miami that LionMan put together. So this will give you a little bit of a taste of the top 10, but of course you guys will have your different thoughts down in the comment section below. Of course, so many honourable mentions, as I think I already mentioned, to go through here. So I want to rattle off some names before we get into the top 10. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Like if you do, subscribe if you're new as always. I'm sure you'll leave your thoughts down below on your top 10. Putting a top 10 together is pretty difficult anyway, so maybe you put together a top 5 or something like that, whatever you guys are feeling. Of course, this is the top 10 from this season. Another question would be, who are the top 10 of all time now, going into this new era of Call of Duty, which is another video that I'll probably make at some point. I may have made that in the past, ages ago. I definitely wrote an article on it, probably this time last year, a little bit earlier, who were my top 10 players of all time then. It probably will have changed up a little bit now. So yeah, be interested to hear your thoughts down below as always. Let's hop into some honourable mentions. There are so many you could say here for honourable mentions. I chose a 10th player, which maybe is a little bit controversial, whatever, but there's so many players. Let's just rattle off a few, because I wrote down a few here, because there's so many honourable mentions. These are some honourable mentions. I've got about 10 of them. I think that you guys could put probably any of them in your top 10, and you would be justified in doing so. The likes of Gunless, GodRx, you know, TJ Halley, Brack, Kenny, Morks, Arcetes, another one that I didn't put in my top 10, maybe could have been. I didn't put him in there just because the middle of the season, he was kind of bang average. End of the season, he was great. Start of the season, he was great. Middle of the season, he was kind of around a 1 KD-ish mark. You know, Former you could have put in your top 10, probably. Hook could have definitely been in there. Attach as well is another player that I just missed out of the top 10. But you know, think of those names I've just gone through, and then think of the amount of the talent of the players that are going to be in the top 10 here. So let's start off my list with number 10. I'm gonna go with Donnie Temp, and this may be a controversial one. I just think that over the entirety of the season, this is his performance at Anaheim. Yes, he didn't win a championship, and yes, at the end of the year, he wasn't as good as he was towards the middle and towards the start. But you know, for those of you who watched a lot of the Pro League, that watch like London and Anaheim and Fort Worth and these kind of events, Temp was a force of nature. He's pretty much led up the damage statistics for the entire year. I feel like, you know, he's not the most popular character, say, but in terms of his overall performance this year, I think he does deserve it. You see that, you know, he's got the fire on this LionMan card from Anaheim, and that's because he's had 5 90+ performances in a row on these player cards is what the fire means. So yeah, definitely I think deserved a mention in the top 10 here. Of course, honourable mention could have been another place to put him. A lot of the players I just mentioned could have been put over Temp, but you know, top 10 lists are hard. So I put Donnie Temp in at number 10. I think it's probably fair enough. Number 9, I'm going to go with Skrapz G. These are his performances from the Pro League qualifiers, London, you know, weeks 1 to 4 of the Pro League, Fort Worth and Anaheim. Towards the end of the year, he was equally good as well. He's just been fantastic the entire season as Skrapz. Definitely one of the standout players. Of course, back in the Infinite Warfare days, Skrapz and Wiskin, when they were playing on that Fnatic team, Wiskin was probably more of the standout. Last season, it was definitely Skrapz. Got to go on to Red Reserve. This season, he had a difficult time of things. He was an absolute monster at the qualifiers. I don't know if you guys remember that, but pretty much single-handedly at times got them through the PLQ, because of course they went Game 5, Round 11, I think, with G2, to even make it to the Pro League, which would have been a crazy story, but they do make it in. And of course, Skrapz then goes on to FaZe Clan in the latter half of the season, an absolute monster in the respawns. Maybe his Search and Destroy wasn't quite as good, but his control and his hardpoint especially was spectacular the entire season long. Definitely deserving, I think, of a top 10 placing. You know, I'm going to put him at top 9 or 9th in my overall players of the year. Probably he could have even gone higher. Number 8, I'm going to go with Envoy. Probably once again, Envoy could have gone higher here. He was fantastic the entire season. Here he is at the CWL finals, a 96 rating. I think this might have been his highest of the entire season at Miami. Didn't win the event, unfortunately for him, but from the start of the season on that Midnight team all the way through, on that Midnight team when they went 6-0 at the Pro League qualifiers to qualify for the league. Then they had all of the organisation, you know, kerfuddle. And then Envoy was picked up onto Gen G and just was honestly just fantastic the entire season, given he had an SMG in hand. Probably could have bumped him up the rankings a little bit more, but I'm basing it a little bit more of maybe event wins and the like than purely off performances. But yeah, Envoy probably should have been higher than this, to be honest, but I'm just going to stick with it because I put these players in order, so we're just going to go with it. But this was his performance at the finals. Truly just incredible stuff, and not really much more needs to be said. He played in Advanced Warfare, and he's now moved on to come back in the Black Ops 4 season, and just a monster. Hopefully we see more of this next season. Like, look how great these performances were with the SMG in hand a lot of the time. Very, very difficult to do. Arguably across the entire season, the best SMG of the game. We're going to put Simp up there, of course. We're going to put Dylan up there, of course. Envoy just behind them in terms of maybe I'm a little bit skewed by what happened at the World Championships, right? And they come top 32. But over the entire season, Envoy definitely deserves a mention. 7th position, I'm going to go with Slasher. This is a guy that I feel always flies under the radar, especially this season. I feel like he flies under the radar. Like, look at these performances through, obviously the PLQ was not so good for 100 Thieves, but they did make it into the league. London, Pro League, Fort Worth, Anaheim, got MVP, of course, as Anaheim. London, they won it as well. And Slasher is just a player that, when we were doing our fantasy draft the other day on Spitfire, Slasher would have been my first choice. I feel like if you want to build... Okay, Scump would have been my first choice if we're going purely for, have like a fan base and that. But if you want to build the best team in the game, Slasher is like the number one pick. He's a great leader. He's got so much experience. He's a fantastic player. And honestly, I feel like he flies under the radar a lot, especially because of how good the rest of the guys were on his team. So Slasher I'm going to chuck in here as well for sure. I think it's definitely well deserved. And he's going to be my number 7 pick, I believe. Number 6 is going to go to Priestahh. I think Priestahh over the season was criminally underrated. He had the role on phase, he was on phase at the start of the season. He had to run an ICR at times. He was using every single role and putting up great figures with it. Then on this 100 Thieves squad, he's been using the SMG, the Maddox, whatever they need him to do, playing the difficult roles, still putting up incredible numbers. Like, the fact of the matter is that Priestahh is just a phenomenal player, and his name might not be the biggest name in the game, to be honest, in the world. But, like, I think, to be honest, considering how well he did, I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably thinking, oh, Priestahh isn't underrated. Like, he's a very solid player. Whenever I watch him play, I just think he's putting on an absolute clinic all the time. And I've never been more impressed, to be honest, with the player over the course of the season. Whenever I watch him, I think he's just world-starring everyone. And I personally think, even though a lot of people would probably put him in the top 10, I still think he's probably a little bit underrated from where other people would place him. That's maybe my opinion. But look at these numbers he's putting up over the course of the season. These are just Lion Man's ratings. A lot of it is dependent on KD and hardpoint efficiency and hill time and all of these kind of things. So these are the ratings, and just a phenomenal season for him, especially considering the role, and I can't wait to watch him more going forwards because he's a real treat to watch. Number 5, I'm going to go with Dylan CoD. Maybe you could say that Envoy should have been right up here, but for me, I think Dylan deserves it, especially given the performances at the World Championship, getting reciprocity to, at the very least, a decent placing there. Top 3 as well at Fort Worth, and he got this card for this iconic moment, hardpoint comeback versus LG, where he goes like 27-2 or 27-3 over the course of a couple of minutes or so to bring an unbelievable comeback versus them. To be honest, over the course of the season, I think Dylan definitely deserves it. He really revolutionized how to play with the SMG at times, just unbelievable levels of aggression. Just putting on an absolute clinic all over the map, rarely ever making mistakes, just at any time can completely take over a game. Had a little bit of a slower end to the year for sure, but at the end of the day, still just a fantastic overall year from him. 97 performance here at the CWL finals. Especially considering his role. Envoy, a little bit more used to Maddox at times, so given Dylan was just this pure SMG, always the first man in, but always getting that first kill, and sometimes just popping 2 pieces left, right, and centre. I feel like Dylan's got to be an incredible hot prospect going into next season. Number 4, I'm going to go with aBeZy. I think this is well deserved. Once again, another player I think was pretty underrated over the course of the season. Happy to see him, of course, win the World Championship. Before Simp joined E United, aBeZy was the man. He was the hard carry. He was going off all the time. This was his performance at the World Championships. Just phenomenal plays in control, in search and destroy as well. He just makes the space for his team. Just honestly a phenomenal job. He's such a hot prospect right now. Him and Simp, the absolutely deadly SMG duo in E United. No one could really match them once they got going. And even before Simp was on the team, aBeZy was still a force to be reckoned with, so he definitely deserves it for me at number 4. Number 3, I'm going to go with Dashi. This may be controversial to have him higher here. I just think his performances at times, especially at the finals, of course, they had a pretty horrendous time of things. Of course, at Vegas, he probably had the best tournament that anyone's ever had, maybe apart from formal Infinite Warfare. Definitely has got to be right up there over the course of the season. He could arguably be number 1 for sure, arguably be number 2. Personally, I'm going to put him a little bit lower than that, just because maybe at the championships, at the end of the day, they won Vegas, but didn't really win much else, so it's difficult to put him above the top 2 players I'm going to go for, but certainly you guys could have this in another order. Number 2, I'm going to go with Simp. Now, this may be controversial that I haven't got him at number 1. My personal feeling is that he only came into play, halfway kind of through the year when JCap left that United squad and Simp comes into the team and starts to absolutely go off. If I'm choosing a player that's going to be the best for the entirety of the Black Ops 4 season, I'm not going to go with Simp just because he didn't play the entirety of the Black Ops 4 season. If he did, he would be the undisputed number 1 probably. But because, he started kind of late in the season, got better and better though towards finals and then the World Championship, of course, with an unbelievable performance. Probably the best player of the year, but just because he didn't play the entire year, I'm going to put him at number 2 to the likes of Octane. And I feel like Octane just deserves all the credit he can get right now. The Preli qualifier wasn't so good, but the ICR this year was not an easy weapon to use by any means, but through the entire season he was just phenomenal with it, always putting up numbers, especially in the big matches, always just putting on a clinic. So, Simp would have been my number 1 if it had played the entire season, I think, but Octane is going to get it just because he did an incredibly difficult role. Like, how many other ICRs do you see on this top 10 list? It's very difficult to use that weapon and get an incredible amount of efficiency out of it, so that's why I'm going to give Octane my number 1 spot for this season. And this is Reddit's choice, just to show you guys. I'm sure you might be interested. So Dashi got number 1 on the Reddit. Simp, Octane, aBeZy, Dylan, Envoy, Priestahh, Slasher, Skrapz, and Temp. So I'm pretty sure those are my top 10 as well, just in a different order. And yeah, a lot of honourable mentions here just below the top 10. So be interested to hear your thoughts down below. Leave your thoughts down below. I've said that twice in a row, but whatever. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like if you did, subscribe if you are new as always. I think this is a pretty interesting thing to do. I'll probably in a few days' time, or whenever the time comes, do a video on my top 10 players of all time following this World Championship, which may well have been the final one. Just to explain briefly, if you guys are sticking around, why it might be the final World Championship. What a lot of people are suggesting is that next season, if the CDL looks a lot like the OWL, the Overwatch League, which is split into 4 stages of a league with like playoffs at the end of each stage, the amateurs don't really have a chance to play against the pros. So a world championship where we have 16 amateur teams, 16 pro teams is unlikely to happen. So that's the suggestion. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like if you did, subscribe if you're new as always. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.